So, back in 2019, the Nobel Prize in Economics was awarded for something, well, something really revolutionary. We're not talking about some grand theory on how markets work. Nope. This was for a practical, on the ground way to actually fight global poverty. And at the heart of this whole thing was Esther Duflo, who, along with her colleagues, completely changed how we figure out what actually helps. For decades, this was the billion-dollar question, right? It haunted governments and NGOs. They were pouring all this money into aid and development, but when you asked for hard proof that a program was truly working, well, the answers got pretty fuzzy pretty fast. And look, that's not just some outsider's critique. Those are the words of Esther Duflo herself. She basically argued that for way too long, our approach to helping the poor was all based on assumptions, on ideology, not on solid evidence. It was, as she said, more like guesswork, when what we really needed was science. And, this skepticism wasn't just coming from the public. Duflo herself admitted in her Nobel lecture that she never even wanted to be an economist. Why? Because she didn't trust them. She came at this whole field not as a believer, but as a total skeptic who was determined to find a better, more credible way to get real answers. Okay, so to really get what a huge change this was, we've got to look at how things used to be. What was the old way of thinking about poverty that Duflo and her team just completely turned upside down? The old way, it was all about these massive macroeconomic theories. You'd have economists debating huge ideas, looking at giant cross-country data sets, just trying to spot correlations. The new way, the one Duflo championed, flips that script. It asks small, manageable questions and uses actual experiments in the real world to find not just correlation, but causation. And here is the absolute core of the problem with the old way of thinking. You could never really prove cause and effect. I mean, sure, you could see that countries with more schools might have higher literacy rates. But did the schools cause the improvement? Or did wealthier, more motivated communities just happen to build more schools and also have higher literacy? It was this tangled, confusing mess. And this is where it all changed. The big idea was actually pretty simple, but totally radical. It was borrowed from a completely different field. What if? What if you could test a social policy with the exact same rigor you use to test a new drug? So the fundamental shift in thinking was to just stop looking for a single silver bullet, that one big idea that would end poverty forever. Instead, the goal became to break the problem down into smaller, more bite-sized pieces. So instead of asking, how do we fix education, they started asking questions like, does giving kids free textbooks actually increase their test scores? Now that's a question you can really answer. And the main tool for answering these questions is the randomized controlled trial, or RCT. It's the gold standard in medicine for a very good reason. You create two randomly assigned groups, you give the treatment to only one of them, and that lets you isolate its true effect with incredible accuracy. Now, the method itself wasn't new, but applying it to social policy over and over again, that was the game changer. The logic behind it is just so powerful and simple. You start with your question. Then, you create a treatment group. They get the program, and a control group. They don't. And here's the magic ingredient. Who goes into which group is totally random, like a coin flip. This makes sure that, on average, the two groups are basically identical. So when you compare the results later, any difference you see, you can be super confident it was because of the program. No more guesswork. Now, while Michael Kramer was a real pioneer in showing you could run these kinds of experiments, Esther Duflo's unique genius was in figuring out how to do it at an absolutely massive scale. She wasn't just using the tool, she was building the whole factory. Right, so Duflo's great contribution was taking this method and turning it into a systematic global research program. She built the entire infrastructure to make it possible to evaluate policies all over the world. She basically institutionalized the whole experimental approach. And the beating heart of that whole infrastructure is this, the Abdul Latif Jameel Poverty Action Lab, or JPAL, which she co-founded at MIT. JPAL really became the command center for this whole new movement in economics. And the results of all that work? It's just staggering. Take a look at this map from Duflo's Nobel lecture. It shows JPAL's incredible global reach. It's this massive network of hundreds of researchers running experiments on almost every continent, tackling everything you can imagine: education, health, finance, governance, you name it. And J-PAL's mission is so much more than just publishing papers in academic journals. It's a whole ecosystem. They run the studies, sure, but they also work hand in hand with governments and NGOs to turn those findings into actual concrete policy. They're really pushing the world towards making decisions based on evidence, not just hunches. So, okay, all this theory, all this infrastructure, it sounds really impressive. But what does it actually mean for people? Did this new way of doing things really make a difference in the real world? The answer is a huge, resounding yes. Take a look at this number, 5 million. According to the Nobel Committee, as a direct result of just one study on remedial tutoring, more than 5 million kids in India have benefited from programs that actually work. That's not a theory, that's millions of lives changed because of one carefully run experiment. The Nobel Committee, I think, said it best. They concluded that this work hasn't just improved our theories, it has, and I quote, dramatically improved our ability to fight poverty in practice. This is all about getting real results on the ground for some of the world's most vulnerable people. Now, Duflo herself is always quick to point out that the path from research to policy is not some clean, simple, step-by-step process. She thinks that idea is a total straw man. The reality isn't that you run one experiment, write up a nice report, and a government instantly changes everything. It's a long, messy, back-and-forth conversation. Each experiment is just like one tiny dot on a giant painting. It's only when you have lots and lots of dots that you start to see the full picture. So what's the legacy of all this? What's the big takeaway? It's a complete reimagining of what a development economist even is, and what they do. It's a whole new paradigm for the entire field. This experimental approach truly transformed development economics. It took the field from being all about abstract, grand theories to being a pragmatic, hands-on science. It's less about debating ideology from an armchair and more about getting out there, finding what's broken, and fixing it with tools you know will work. And I think this is just the perfect metaphor for that whole shift, and it comes from Duflo herself, the economist as plumber. Think about it. A plumber doesn't show up at your house and start talking about grand theories of hydrodynamics, right? Of course not. They get in there, they look at the pipes, they find the specific clog, and they figure out how to fix it. That, she says, is the new job description for the modern development economist. So this whole revolution has given us this incredibly powerful, proven toolkit to start tackling some of the world's toughest problems, which really leaves us with this one huge and kind of exciting question. Now that we have the tools, what should we fix next?